The massive Galactic Federation warships appeared suddenly in Earth's orbit, their crystalline hulls shining brightly as sunlight reflected off their surfaces. Each ship was easily the size of a small city, dwarfing anything humans had ever built for space travel. The fleet stretched across the sky like a string of artificial stars, visible even from the ground during daylight hours. Admiral Kang stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Righteous Victory, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he studied the blue planet below. His gray skin had a slight metallic sheen, and his mandibles clicked together, a sign of eager anticipation among his species. The massive view screen showed him detailed scans of Earth's defenses, which seemed laughably primitive compared to Federation technology. "Another primitive world," he said to his bridge crew, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard Federation speech. "They haven't even established colonies beyond their moon. This conquest will be over before the day cycle ends." The Admiral had led dozens of planetary conquests during his long career. Each time, the pattern was the same: shock and awe from overwhelming force, followed by quick surrender and integration into the Federation. His species, the Varka, took pride in their efficient conquests. They hadn't faced real resistance in over 300 years. But on Earth, Commander Sarah Lee of the Earth Defense Force was about to change that pattern. She stood in the underground command center beneath Mount Fuji, watching as the alien fleet positioned itself in attack formation. Unlike many of her colleagues who were panicking at humanity's first contact with alien life, she remained calm and focused. "They're preparing to fire," reported her sensor officer, multiple weapons charging across their fleet. Commander Lee allowed herself a small smile. "Let them make the first move. Defensive positions only. Wait for my signal." The Federation ships opened fire in perfect synchronization, their plasma weapons lighting up the sky with brilliant purple beams. Admiral Kang expected to see Earth's primitive military installations vaporized. Instead, something unprecedented happened. Just before the plasma beams could reach their targets, a shimmering grid of energy appeared in the upper atmosphere. The Quantum Defense Grid, a secret project that even most world leaders didn't know existed, sprang to life. Years of reverse engineering crashed alien tech, and combining it with human innovation had led to this moment. The plasma weapons splashed harmlessly against the energy grid, dispersing into harmless light shows. On his command deck, Admiral Kang's mandibles stopped mid-click. For the first time in his career, he felt uncertainty. "Impossible," he muttered, causing his bridge crew to look at him with concern. They had never heard doubt in their admiral's voice before. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. They shouldn't have energy shielding of any kind, let alone one that can stop our weapons." Commander Lee didn't waste time savoring the moment. "Execute counter-offensive Plan Delta," she ordered. "Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like." Across Earth's orbit, thousands of civilian communications satellites suddenly activated hidden programs. These satellites, which the Federation had dismissed as primitive communication devices, had been secretly modified over the past decade. Each one now contained a simple but effective electromagnetic pulse generator, built using technology that even the Federation considered obsolete. The EMP attack wasn't particularly sophisticated by Federation standards, but that was exactly why it worked. The Federation's ships, protected against all manner of advanced energy weapons and exotic particles, had no defenses against such a basic form of attack. Their shields were designed to stop high-energy impacts, not the relatively low-power electromagnetic pulses that now washed over their ships. Ship after ship lost power as their sensitive control systems were overwhelmed. Not enough to destroy them, but enough to cause chaos in their perfectly ordered fleet. Admiral Kang watched in growing horror as a third of his ships went dark, their crews struggling to restore basic functions. "Status report," he demanded, his translator struggling to keep up with his agitated clicks. "Multiple ships reporting critical systems failure," his second-in-command reported. "The humans, they modified their primitive satellites into weapons. We didn't even consider them a threat." In the Earth Defense Force Command Center, Commander Lee watched the Federation fleet's formation break apart as ships tried to restore power. "Interesting," she said quietly. "They expect everyone to fight the same way they do, with advanced technology and standard tactics. They don't understand that humans have spent thousands of years learning to fight smarter, not just stronger." The battle was far from over, but that first exchange had sent a clear message to the Federation. Humanity wouldn't be conquered easily, and they certainly wouldn't fight according to anyone else's rules. As Admiral Kang ordered his remaining ships to pull back and regroup, he realized this conquest would be nothing like the others. "Send word to the High Command," he ordered. "We may have miscalculated. These humans, they fight differently. They think differently." He paused, watching as more of his ships struggled to restore power. "And they are far more dangerous than we imagined." The first battle for Earth had lasted less than an hour, but it had already changed the course of galactic history. The Federation had learned its first lesson about humanity. Never assume that technological superiority guarantees victory. It would not be the last lesson they would learn in the coming war. Captain Sun walked through the gleaming corridors of the Federation flagship, clutching her datapad tightly. Her steps echoed against the crystalline floors as she made her way to Admiral Kang's private quarters. The information she carried would change everything they thought they knew about their enemy. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Admiral Kang studying tactical displays of Earth's surface. His mandibles twitched with frustration as he reviewed their recent losses. "Sir," Captain Sun said, her voice steady despite her nervousness, "I have completed my analysis of human historical records. You need to see this immediately." The Admiral turned, noting the concern in his intelligence officer's posture. "Proceed, Captain." Sun activated her datapad, projecting a series of images into the air. They showed humans fighting in every possible environment: frozen wastelands, burning deserts, dense jungles, and deep oceans. "These humans," she began, her voice carrying a note of wonder, "they're completely different from any species we've encountered. Their historical records show endless warfare, but instead of destroying themselves, they'd grown stronger with each conflict." She brought up images of human wars throughout history, from ancient battles with primitive weapons to modern warfare. While other species evolved to specialize in specific environments, humans adapted to fight anywhere. They've turned their lack of natural advantages into their greatest strength. At that very moment, on the ground in Ghana, Lieutenant Park was proving Sun's point. He led his Special Forces team through the thick jungle, where the humidity reached levels that would have killed most alien species. The Federation's ground forces had assumed their advanced environmental suits would give them the advantage. They were wrong. Park's team moved silently through the undergrowth, their bodies naturally adapted to the harsh conditions. They had spent weeks studying how the alien suits malfunctioned in extreme humidity, how their advanced sensors became confused by the dense vegetation. "Target in sight," Park whispered to his team, pointing to a Federation patrol ahead. The aliens moved awkwardly in their suits, struggling with the terrain. Their sophisticated targeting systems, designed for open battlefield combat, were nearly useless in the thick jungle. Back on the flagship, Captain Sun continued her briefing. "Look at this, sir," she said, showing footage from their initial battles. "When we destroyed their military bases, they turned civilian infrastructure into weapons. When we jammed their communications, they created new ones. Every time we think we've defeated them, they come back stronger." Admiral Kang watched as the data showed humans adapting Federation technology in ways their engineers had never considered. "How is this possible?" he asked, more to himself than Sun. "Their entire history is filled with smaller groups defeating larger, better-equipped forces," Sun explained. "They call it asymmetric warfare. While we focus on overwhelming force, they find creative ways to use our strength against us." In Ghana, Park's team demonstrated this perfectly. They didn't try to match the Federation's advanced weapons. Instead, they used the natural environment as their ally. The heavy rains short-circuited the alien suit systems. The thick canopy blocked their orbital support. "Move on my mark," Park ordered. His soldiers carried simple weapons modified with Earth technology. They didn't need complex targeting systems. They had trained their whole lives to operate in these conditions. The Federation patrol never saw them coming. By the time they realized they were under attack, Park's team had already disappeared back into the jungle, leaving behind another defeated alien unit. Captain Sun brought up more data. "Sir, look at their response to defeats. Other species we've conquered either surrendered or broke under pressure. Humans, they learn from failure. They adapt. They overcome." She showed statistics from their ground campaigns. Every time we win a battle, their next response is stronger, more innovative. They're not just fighting us, they're studying us, learning our weaknesses, finding new ways to defeat us. Admiral Kang's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Are you suggesting we can't defeat them?" "I'm suggesting, sir, that traditional conquest strategies won't work. They thrive on adversity. Their entire species seems built around overcoming impossible odds." As if to emphasize her point, reports began coming in from across Earth. In Siberia, humans were using the extreme cold to freeze the aliens' thermal regulators. In the Sahara, they used the sand to clog Federation equipment. Underground, in the ocean, in mountains, everywhere the Federation fought, humans found ways to turn the environment into a weapon. Their adaptability goes beyond physical survival. Sun continued. They learn and innovate at an alarming rate. Our technology advantage is shrinking every day as they reverse engineer our equipment and combine it with their own ideas. Admiral Kang stared at the tactical displays, seeing his carefully planned invasion falling apart. "What do you recommend, Captain?" "We need to completely rethink our approach, sir. These humans, they're not just another species to be conquered. They're something we've never encountered before. A species that doesn't just survive. They turn survival into an art form." Looking at the mounting casualty reports from Earth, Admiral Kang realized the truth in Sun's words. They had severely underestimated humanity, and that mistake was costing them dearly. The question was no longer how to conquer Earth, but whether they could afford to continue trying. The streets of Seoul had become silent in a way the city had never known before. Where millions once rushed through their daily lives, now only the echo of distant explosions disturbed the quiet. Colonel Kim stood at the window of an abandoned office building, watching Federation troops patrol the streets below. Their crystalline armor gleamed in the morning sun, making them easy targets against the gray concrete of the city. "They still don't understand," Kim said softly to his team. "They think controlling the main streets means they control the city." The resistance fighters had spent weeks preparing Seoul for this moment. Every alley, every rooftop, every subway tunnel had been transformed into part of their defense network. Simple security cameras, connected through the city's old internet infrastructure, tracked alien movements. Civilian drones, modified with homemade explosives, waited silently on rooftops. Private Han worked in the basement of what had once been an electronics store, carefully mixing aluminum powder with rust. His hands moved with practiced precision as he packed the mixture into small containers. The thermite charges weren't sophisticated. They were literally made from scrap metal and rust. But they worked. "Patrol approaching Checkpoint 3, came the quiet voice over their radio. The resistance used simple walkie-talkies, knowing the Federation would be listening for more advanced communications. Kim nodded to his team. They moved silently through the building's maintenance tunnels, a network that connected most of downtown Seoul. The Federation's advanced scanners couldn't penetrate the dense concrete and steel, another weakness the humans had discovered and exploited. Above ground, the alien patrol moved confidently down the street. Their armor could stop energy weapons, deflect bullets, and protect them from most known weapons. What they didn't expect was the attack to come from everywhere at once. The first sign of trouble came when the manhole covers in the streets suddenly exploded upward, launched by simple compressed air systems. The alien sensors, calibrated for energy weapons and explosives, hadn't detected the purely mechanical traps. As the patrol scattered in confusion, dozens of modified civilian drones swooped down from the rooftops. They weren't military drones, just ordinary delivery drones retrofitted with crude but effective weapons. The aliens' armor, designed to stop high-energy attacks, proved surprisingly vulnerable to the simple thermite charges the drones dropped. "Their armor is failing," one of the alien soldiers shouted. His warning was cut short as the thermite burned through his suit's joints. Private Han watched from his hidden position as his homemade weapons proved devastatingly effective. The thermite burned hot enough to melt through the aliens' advanced armor, and there was nothing high-tech about it. Just basic chemistry turned into a weapon. The aliens tried to retreat, but every direction led to another trap. The humans had rigged the entire neighborhood. Store security shutters slammed down, blocking escape routes. Traffic signals suddenly blazed to life, their intense LED lights overwhelming the aliens' sensitive optical sensors. "Move to Phase 2, Kim ordered through the radio. The subway tunnels beneath the aliens' feet came alive with activity. The Resistance had mapped every maintenance shaft, every utility tunnel, every forgotten passage under the city. Now they used them all. Small teams emerged from hidden entrances, struck fast, and disappeared again before the aliens could respond. In her command center aboard the flagship, Captain Sun watched the disaster unfold through the aliens' combat feeds. "This is unprecedented," she reported to Admiral Kang. "They're not just fighting us, they're using the entire city as a weapon." The Resistance fighters moved through their city like ghosts, using their intimate knowledge of every street and building. They had spent their lives in this urban maze, and now they turned that knowledge into a devastating advantage. Kim's team struck again and again, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. They used the city's own systems against the invaders. Power grid fluctuations to disrupt alien sensors, water pressure changes to flood tunnels, even the subway's ventilation system to spread blinding smoke. "They're not just adapting our weapons," Sun continued her report. "They're creating new ones from whatever they have available. Every piece of civilian infrastructure becomes a potential threat." In the streets below, the alien patrol had been completely destroyed, not by advanced weapons or superior technology, but by simple chemistry and intimate knowledge of the urban battlefield. Kim's fighters quickly collected any useful alien equipment and disappeared back into their tunnel network. "Set up for the next patrol," Kim ordered as his team regrouped in their hidden command post. "They'll send reinforcements soon, probably with heavier weapons. We'll be ready." Han began preparing more thermite charges, their simple but effective weapon proving its worth. Around him, other Resistance fighters modified more civilian drones, rigged more traps, and prepared to turn more of their city's infrastructure against the invaders. The aliens had come expecting to fight a conventional war against primitive weapons. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that could turn everything around them into a weapon. Every streetlight could blind them, every manhole could hide a trap, every civilian drone could become a deadly attacker. As night fell over Seoul, the Resistance prepared for another round of combat. They didn't need advanced alien technology to fight. They just needed their city, their knowledge, and their determination to survive. The Federation was learning a harsh lesson. In urban warfare, the humans' creativity and adaptability made them far more dangerous than any advanced weapon could. Dr. Song sat in her underground lab, surrounded by screens displaying Federation communication intercepts. Her team had spent months studying the aliens' behavior patterns, social structures, and most importantly, their fears. What they discovered changed the entire course of the war. "Look at this," she told her team, pointing to a behavioral analysis. "The Federation has conquered dozens of species, but they all fought in predictable ways. They've never faced an enemy that adapts and changes like we do. The aliens' rigid social structure was their weakness. They couldn't understand or cope with humanity's chaos and unpredictability. Dr. Song's team began exploiting this weakness in ways the Federation never expected. They started by letting captured Federation soldiers escape with video footage of human training exercises. The videos showed soldiers crawling through fire, swimming in freezing water, and continuing to fight despite severe injuries. All normal human training, but terrifying to the aliens who had never seen such behavior. "They think we're insane," one of Dr. Song's analysts reported, reading intercepted Federation communications. "They can't understand why we don't surrender when outgunned, or why we keep fighting after taking losses that would break their soldiers." The story of Sergeant Choi's unit became their most powerful psychological weapon. It started during a routine defense of a mountain base in the Himalayas. The Federation, frustrated by the unit's stubborn resistance, decided to end the battle with an orbital strike. The massive energy beam from their ship hit the mountain directly. The Federation expected total destruction. Instead, something impossible happened. As the dust cleared, Sergeant Choi led his surviving troops out of hidden tunnels in the mountain. Their base was destroyed, but they hadn't been in it. They had anticipated the strike and adapted, just as humans always did. "Keep fighting," Choi told his men as they emerged from the smoke. "Let them see that nothing they do can stop us." The Federation soldiers watched in horror as the humans they thought they had destroyed charged at their positions. Choi's unit fought with even more determination than before, using the wreckage of their own base as cover. Dr. Song's team made sure stories of this battle spread through the Federation ranks. They planted tales of human soldiers continuing to fight after injuries that should have killed them, of troops appearing from nowhere after their positions were destroyed, of humans laughing in the face of superior alien technology. "They're starting to fear us," Dr. Song reported to military command. "Not because we're stronger, but because we don't behave the way they think we should." The psychological warfare worked better than they had hoped. Federation troops began hesitating before engaging human forces. They became jumpy, seeing potential human ambushes everywhere. Their rigid military doctrine fell apart when faced with an enemy they couldn't predict. In their command centers, Federation officers struggled to understand human tactics. One day, humans would retreat from a stronger force. The next, they would fight to the death against impossible odds. They used primitive weapons alongside advanced technology, mixed strategies from different eras of warfare, and seemed to take pride in surviving situations that should have killed them. The story of Choi's unit grew with each retelling among Federation forces. Some claimed the humans had supernatural abilities. Others said they were immune to pain. The truth, that humans were simply incredibly adaptable and stubborn, was somehow more frightening to the aliens than any supernatural explanation. Dr. Song's team intercepted a conversation between two Federation commanders that proved their strategy was working. "These humans," one officer said, "they're not natural. We destroyed their base, but they kept fighting. We cut off their supplies, but they adapted. They're not following any known combat doctrine. How do you fight an enemy that enjoys combat?" The other responded, "Every defeat makes them stronger. Every time we think we've broken them, they come back worse than before." Federation morale began to crack. Their soldiers, used to fighting enemies who followed logical patterns, couldn't handle humans' apparent randomness. They started seeing humans as monsters rather than merely primitive aliens. Sergeant Choi's unit continued to fight, unaware they had become legendary among Federation forces. They simply did what humans had always done: adapted, survived, and kept fighting no matter what. The Federation's greatest weakness, Dr. Song wrote in her report, is their inability to understand that humans don't follow patterns. "We thrive on chaos, adapt to defeat, and turn desperation into strength." To them, this isn't just alien, it's terrifying. The psychological victory proved as important as any military success. Federation troops began to retreat from smaller human forces. They saw human survivors as supernatural rather than just determined. Their fear of humanity's unpredictability became a weapon more powerful than any technology. As Dr. Song watched the Federation's confidence crumble, she understood something fundamental about the war. The aliens had expected to fight a primitive species struggling to use advanced technology. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy whose greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics, but their utterly alien way of thinking. The Federation had never learned to fear before meeting humanity. Now they were learning that fear itself could be the deadliest weapon of all. General Yoon stood in the newly established Global Defense Command Center, watching screens that showed military operations from every corner of Earth. What she saw would have seemed impossible just months ago. Soldiers from traditionally rival nations fighting side by side, sharing techniques and strategies that had been closely guarded secrets for generations. "Show me the Siberian front," she ordered, and the main screen switched to a live feed from the Russian tundra. There, Brazilian Special Forces troops were learning to fight in the snow from Russian veterans, while teaching their own jungle combat techniques in return. The Federation never expected to face jungle warfare tactics in the frozen wasteland. "The aliens don't understand what they've done," her aide commented. "They've given us a common enemy, something that's never existed before." In the Australian outback, Korean stealth specialists worked with Aboriginal trackers, combining advanced technology with ancient survival skills. They moved through the desert like ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will, leaving destroyed Federation patrols in their wake. The Federation's command structure couldn't comprehend what was happening. Their reports showed desert warfare tactics being used in Arctic conditions, jungle ambush techniques adapted for urban combat, and maritime strategies applied to mountain warfare. Admiral Kang received these reports with growing frustration aboard his flagship. "How can they keep changing their methods?" he demanded. "Every time we adapt to one strategy, they switch to something completely different." In the Amazon rainforest, Indonesian guerrilla warfare experts trained alongside Brazilian troops, teaching them techniques developed in their own dense jungles. Together, they created new hybrid tactics that the Federation had never seen before. General Yoon moved between different command stations, coordinating this unprecedented global cooperation. "Show me the North African operation," she ordered. The screen displayed Egyptian and Canadian forces working together in the Sahara. The Canadians, experts in Arctic survival, had quickly adapted their cold weather endurance techniques to the desert heat. Combined with Egyptian desert warfare expertise, they had turned the seemingly empty desert into a death trap for Federation forces. "They expected us to fight as separate nations," Yoon explained to a group of international commanders. "They thought our differences would make us weak. Instead, we're combining our strengths in ways they can't predict." In the Hindu Kush Mountains, Norwegian mountain troops worked with Nepalese Gurkhas, creating new high-altitude combat techniques. The Federation's advanced climbing gear proved useless against soldiers who had mastered these peaks through generations of experience. The aliens' rigid military doctrine, which had served them well in conquering other worlds, became their greatest weakness. They couldn't adapt fast enough to counter tactics that change not just day by day, but hour by hour and battlefield by battlefield. "Status report from the Pacific Theater," an officer called out. The screen showed Vietnamese coastal forces teaching Japanese naval units their river combat techniques, while learning deep-sea warfare in return. Together, they had turned the Pacific Islands into an impossible maze for Federation ships. Admiral Kang watched helplessly as another Federation base fell, this time to a combined force using techniques from 5 different military traditions. "They're not fighting like one army," he realized. "They're fighting like 100 different armies at once." In Antarctica, Israeli desert warfare specialists adapted their heat management techniques to extreme cold, working alongside Argentine mountain troops. The Federation had considered the frozen continent uninhabitable. Now it was becoming another front in the war. General Yoon received reports from each theater of war, watching as humanity's diversity became its greatest strength. Mexican urban combat experts taught their techniques to Chinese troops, while learning Chinese siege warfare strategies. Indian heat adaptation techniques were combined with Finnish cold weather tactics to create soldiers who could fight in any climate. The Federation thinks unity means uniformity, she told her international staff. We're showing them that true unity comes from combining our differences, not erasing them. In orbit, Admiral Kang's tactical display showed Federation forces losing ground on every continent. Each defeat came from a different combination of fighting styles, making it impossible to develop effective countermeasures. They're not just sharing techniques, his tactical officer reported. They're creating entirely new ways of fighting. Every time we encounter their forces, they fight differently than before. General Yoon studied the global battlefield map with satisfaction. South African tracking experts were teaching their skills to British special forces. American logistics specialists were learning Middle Eastern desert supply techniques. Each combination created new tactical possibilities that the Federation couldn't predict. This is humanity's true strength, she told her commanders. We've spent our history fighting each other, learning countless ways to wage war. Now we're combining all that knowledge against a common enemy. The Federation's rigid command structure began to crumble under the strain of facing an enemy that fought like 1,000 armies in one. Their tactical computers, programmed with millions of battle scenarios, couldn't predict what humans would do next because humans themselves were inventing new ways to fight every day. As the sun set on another day of global combat, General Yoon watched her unified human forces push back the alien invaders on every front. The Federation had expected to find a divided planet of primitive warriors. Instead, they found themselves facing the combined military knowledge of all human history, adapted and evolved in ways they could never have predicted. Humanity's greatest weakness, its long history of warfare between nations, had become its greatest strength in facing an external threat. The Federation was learning, too late, that unity doesn't mean everyone fighting the same way. True unity meant combining every way of fighting into something entirely new. Dr. Song stared at the quantum communication device, salvaged from a downed Federation ship, her eyes wide with realization. Her team had spent months studying the alien technology, but they hadn't been trying to copy it. They'd been looking for ways to break it. This isn't just a communication system, she explained to her team, pointing to the complex patterns of quantum entanglement. It's a gateway into their entire network. And if we can get in. The laboratory hummed with activity as scientists and engineers worked around the clock. They weren't trying to build a better communication device. Instead, they were turning it into something the Federation would never expect. A weapon. Lieutenant Park stood at attention in the briefing room as Dr. Song explained their discovery. The Federation's entire combat network relies on quantum entanglement, she said. They think it's unhackable because it's based on physics, not programming. But they never considered someone might weaponize the entanglement itself. The plan they developed was uniquely human. Take something designed for one purpose and turn it into something completely different. They would use the Federation's own communication network to deliver their attack. Are you sure this will work? Park asked, studying the modified quantum devices his team would carry. Dr. Song smiled. They expect us to attack their shields, their weapons, their armor. They're not prepared for us to attack the very fabric of their communications. The assault began at dawn. Park led his Special Forces team toward the Federation's main Earth base, a massive fortress of crystalline structures and energy shields. The aliens had built it to withstand any conventional attack. But this wouldn't be a conventional attack. Remember, Park told his team through their secure comms, we're not trying to break in. We're trying to break their reality. The Federation guards saw nothing unusual at first. Their sensors showed small groups of humans approaching. Surely a suicide mission against their superior defenses. Admiral Kang himself watched from orbit, expecting another futile human attack. Then Dr. Song's team activated their modified quantum devices. As the patrol scattered in confusion, dozens of modified civilian drones swooped down from the rooftops. They weren't military drones, Just ordinary delivery drones retrofitted with crude but effective weapons. The aliens' armor, designed to stop high-energy attacks, proved surprisingly vulnerable to the simple thermite charges the drones dropped. "Their armor is failing," one of the alien soldiers shouted. His warning was cut short as the thermite burned through his suit's joints. Private Han watched from his hidden position as his homemade weapons proved devastatingly effective. The thermite burned hot enough to melt through the aliens' advanced armor, and there was nothing high-tech about it. Just basic chemistry turned into a weapon. The aliens tried to retreat, but every direction led to another trap. The humans had rigged the entire neighborhood. Store security shutters slammed down, blocking escape routes. Traffic signals suddenly blazed to life, their intense LED lights overwhelming the aliens' sensitive optical sensors. "Move to Phase 2, Kim ordered through the radio. The subway tunnels beneath the aliens' feet came alive with activity. The Resistance had mapped every maintenance shaft, every utility tunnel, every forgotten passage under the city. Now they used them all. Small teams emerged from hidden entrances, struck fast, and disappeared again before the aliens could respond. In her command center aboard the flagship, Captain Sun watched the disaster unfold through the aliens' combat feeds. "This is unprecedented," she reported to Admiral Kang. "They're not just fighting us, they're using the entire city as a weapon." The Resistance fighters moved through their city like ghosts, using their intimate knowledge of every street and building. They had spent their lives in this urban maze, and now they turned that knowledge into a devastating advantage. Kim's team struck again and again, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. They used the city's own systems against the invaders. Power grid fluctuations to disrupt alien sensors, water pressure changes to flood tunnels, even the subway's ventilation system to spread blinding smoke. "They're not just adapting our weapons," Sun continued her report. "They're creating new ones from whatever they have available. Every piece of civilian infrastructure becomes a potential threat." In the streets below, the alien patrol had been completely destroyed, not by advanced weapons or superior technology, but by simple chemistry and intimate knowledge of the urban battlefield. Kim's fighters quickly collected any useful alien equipment and disappeared back into their tunnel network. "Set up for the next patrol," Kim ordered as his team regrouped in their hidden command post. "They'll send reinforcements soon, probably with heavier weapons. We'll be ready." Han began preparing more thermite charges, their simple but effective weapon proving its worth. Around him, other Resistance fighters modified more civilian drones, rigged more traps, and prepared to turn more of their city's infrastructure against the invaders. The aliens had come expecting to fight a conventional war against primitive weapons. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that could turn everything around them into a weapon. Every streetlight could blind them, every manhole could hide a trap, every civilian drone could become a deadly attacker. As night fell over Seoul, the Resistance prepared for another round of combat. They didn't need advanced alien technology to fight. They just needed their city, their knowledge, and their determination to survive. The Federation was learning a harsh lesson. In urban warfare, the humans' creativity and adaptability made them far more dangerous than any advanced weapon could. Dr. Song sat in her underground lab, surrounded by screens displaying Federation communication intercepts. Her team had spent months studying the aliens' behavior patterns, social structures, and most importantly, their fears. What they discovered changed the entire course of the war. "Look at this," she told her team, pointing to a behavioral analysis. "The Federation has conquered dozens of species, but they all fought in predictable ways. They've never faced an enemy that adapts and changes like we do. The aliens' rigid social structure was their weakness. They couldn't understand or cope with humanity's chaos and unpredictability." Dr. Song's team began exploiting this weakness in ways the Federation never expected.